This is a short video on fractions and decimals for auto mechanics. We're going to look at some of the more common fractions that will come up when you're working in the garage on a car. And we're also going to talk about the decimal equivalent for those fractions and how you can compare one fraction to another and know which one is larger. In the English system, the smallest unit of measure is an inch. So anything smaller than an inch is going to be measured using fractions. So in the world of auto mechanics, if you're looking for a nut or a bolt that is smaller than an inch in diameter, then you're going to have to deal with the fraction. Some common ones would be 1/2 or 5/8, and that would be in inches. And so you might say, well, how do I know which one of those is bigger? Well, one way to compare fractions is to create a common denominator. And in this case, if we look at our denominators, 2 and 8, the bottom numbers of our fraction, 2 goes into 8. So that means that I can use 8 as my common denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to rewrite these fractions. Now the 5/8, because I didn't change the bottom number, I don't have to change the top one. The 1/2, I multiplied the 2 by 4. So that means I also have to multiply the top number by 4. And when I do that, I get 4/8. And I think now by looking at that, it's pretty obvious that 4/8 is less than 5/8. So now we know that 1/2 is a little bit smaller than 5/8. So let's take a look at some other fractions that you might run into in the garage when you're working on a car. So some other fractions that might turn up are 3/4. Let's see, 9/16, and possibly 3/8. So let's take a look at those. If I wanted to compare those, again, I could look at the denominators. I've got a 4, a 16, and an 8. Well, the good news here again is that 4 and 8 both go into 16, so I can rewrite all of these, or rewrite them, I should say, with a common denominator of 16, and I'm going to use the same method I used previously, which is to say, what did I multiply the bottom number by to turn it into a 16? And in the first case, I multiplied by 4. So both top and bottom, I'm going to multiply by 4. The second one, 9/16, I didn't change that, so I'm going to leave that a 9. And the 8, I multiplied, obviously, by 2, so that means the top also gets multiplied by 2, so that's going to be 6/16. And so now when I look at those, I can see that, as fate would have it in this case, I actually have them in order. 12/16 would be greater than 9/16, which is greater than 6/16, and that tells me that 3/4 of an inch is larger than 9/16 of an inch, which is larger than 3/8. That was our other fraction, right? So let's change that to a 3/8. So that's a way of comparing fractions by finding a common denominator. The other thing you may need to do at times is to recognize that fraction in the form of a decimal. So let's take a look at that. So let's look at some common fractions again. I've chosen 1/2, 3/4, and 9/16. And I suspect that the 1/2 and the 3/4, you know what those are as a decimal. I bet all of you know that 1/2 is equivalent to 0.5 as a decimal, and that 3/4 is equivalent to 0.75 as a decimal. But maybe you're not familiar with 9/16 as a decimal. So let's take a look at how you could do that work. And I realize you could grab your phone and just divide it out. But just so that you understand what that calculator is doing for you, why is 1/2 equivalent to 0.5? Well, the reason is because if we take 2 and divide it into the number 1, it doesn't go, obviously, because 2 is more than 1, but I can put a decimal point and tack on a 0. And then I bring that decimal point straight up, and now 2 does go into 10. It goes 5 times, but that 5 has to go to the right of the decimal. And then if I multiply back, I get 10. 2 times 5 is 10. I subtract and I get 0. So I'm done. My final answer there is 0.5. And of course, if we're talking automotive, In English, it would be inches, all right? And let's do the same thing with the 3/4. So again, we're going to take that bottom number 4 and divide it into the smaller number, the 3, and 4 is not going to go into 3, but it will go into 30. It will go 7 times into 30. 7 times 4 is 28. We're going to subtract and get 2, and then we're going to have to tack on another 0 and bring that down. That's what you do. You tack on another 0 if you have to keep going and bring it down. And then you say, how many times does 4 go into 20? Well, it goes 5 times, and 5 times 4 is indeed 20. So when you subtract there, you get 0, and now you are done. Your final answer is 0.75. And again, in automotive land, that's going to be in inches for now because we're dealing with the English system. Now 9/16, let's see if we can do that. So we're going to take 16, that bottom number, and divide it into our top number, the 9, which is smaller. And we're going to have to tack on, I'm going to put a couple zeros. I don't think this is going to be a quick one. So 16 doesn't go into 9, but it does go into 90, and it'll go 5 times, okay? 5 times 16 is 80. So 5 times 6 is 30, write your 0, carry your 3. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 3 more. That's where the 80 came from. Now if I subtract, I'm going to get 10, and 16 doesn't go into 10, so I have to drop another 0 down. 16 will go into 100. It'll go 6 times, and 6 times 16 is 96. So we're going to subtract. 100 minus 96 is 4, and we're going to have to tack on another 0 and bring that down. So we're going to say, how many times does 16 go into 40? And it'll go twice. And 2 times 16 is 32. And when you subtract 40 minus 32, you get 8. And 16 doesn't go into 8. We got to tack on another 0. And I have a feeling this is going to be the last one, because when I bring that 0 down, 16 does go into 80 exactly 5 times. 5 times 16, you can check it, is 80. And so when you subtract, you get 0 there. And so it turns out that as a decimal, 9/16 is 0.5625 inches. Okay, now I realize you're probably not going to do that by hand. You're going to reach for your calculator. But I think sometimes it's really nice to understand what the calculator is doing for us and to feel like we could do it on our own if we had to, okay? So if we had to order these now based on their decimal values, I think you can see that 1/2, let me pick a different color, I'll use blue. So we can say that 1/2 is 0.5, 3/4 is 0.75, and 9/16 is 0.5625. So in this case, it turns out that 3/4 is our largest fraction, and that's greater than 9/16. And 9/16 is a little more than 0.5, so that's greater than 1/2, okay? So hopefully this gives you a little bit of background understanding into fractions and decimals and how to compare them and where those decimals actually come from. Have a good day.